Thanks for listening to the Cruise Radio Network's Cruise with Bruce show. I'm Bruce Oliver, the host of this program. Welcome to today's show. Good evening. It's Tuesday, March 1st, 2011. Thanks for tuning in to the Cruise with Bruce show. My next program is going to be this Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can listen live to my music, alerts, and news for travelers and cruisers at that time. My guest today is RJ Rubadeau. Today we're going to hear about Bob's background and his adventures around the world. He'll give us some tips on what to do if you want to start sailing, and we're going to hear about his book, or several books, Bound for Rogue Island, Sailing Maine and the World. Bob is an award-winning author, essayist, columnist, and poet. His career as a professional sailor has been chronicled by nearly 100 articles published in over 4 decades of the world's sailing periodicals. Bob's adventures include professional dog racing in Alaska, climbing in the Himalayas, driving a race car for a living, and sailing a small craft around Cape Horn. During this segment of the Cruise with Bruce show, I'll be talking to Bob about his life, his adventures, and his books. Welcome to the program, Bob.
Well, thanks, Bruce, and to all the listeners out there. I'm happy to be here, and I can't wait to tell you a little bit about why I love sailing so much.
Well, I'm excited about today's program, and we talked a little bit earlier. You live in California. You live in Colorado.
That was a big mistake, Bruce. Don't Californicate Colorado.
Oh, I know. You live in Colorado.
Right.
Have the Dog Star, commissioned in Juneau, Alaska, wrote 2 books referencing the Northeast and New England. You trekked through Nepal and Asia and traveled around the world. What do you call home?
Well, home is wherever my wife and I happen to be entertaining our grandkids at the moment. So I'm expecting them to come in tonight. They are still living in Alaska. We lived in Alaska for 20 years after most of our professional cruising was done, and we had to leave our daughter up there as hostage, and so she's got a nice little threesome of grandchildren that are coming down to join us here on the ranch, and we'll have some fun for a couple of weeks landbound before we take off again on another sailing adventure.
Fantastic. Where are you going?
Well, the same Morris 51, home free, owned by Bob and Janie Trenery here in Telluride, Colorado, has been my vehicle of preference. It's a wonderful boat, about the right size for real deep water cruising, and it's the boat we took around Cape Horn in 2007 and 8, and we had. Last year, we actually did a 2,000-mile cruise around the Caribbean looking for dinner, which is an article that'll be coming out in Cruising World pretty quick. Bob is an avid fisher person, and so we toured down through the ABC Islands and to Colombia and San Blas, Panama, and back up through Providencia and the western coast of Cuba before returning to the United States. But the plan we have now, Bruce, we were just cooking it up the other day, is that we're not getting any younger, and you have that bucket list. I'm sure that you have yours as well, and Bob and I are now busy planning and doing all the logistics of about a staggered an expedition style cruise, a 3-year circumnavigation aboard Home Free.
Fantastic. Well, that's exciting. I have a friend, when she got married to her husband, they sold everything they owned and went and got a sailboat and did basically what you were just talking about, sailed around the Caribbean and the Gulf in that area, Aruba and all the islands around there for 2 years looking for dinner. So that was, and then they came back and picked up their careers and went on from there. Just amazing. She just got back from China. Well, anyways, Tell us a little bit about your background. What caused you to
Well,
get into sailing?
Well, Bruce, yeah, I know that you've enjoyed the book, and Bound for Rogue Island. Sailors are, when you get them together in a group, usually you're going to find a lot of storytellers, and I'm not sure why. I think it's those long hours that sitting in the cockpit with nothing to do but watch the watery miles go by, is that you learn how to tell a story, and you have sort of a captive audience, and they'll turn you out pretty quick unless you're making the story jump along. So we basically learned how to tell a story by doing some sailing, and we're happy to share those stories now. And Bound for Roque is one of those testaments to a poor memory. I mean, that you have to write everything down in order to be sure that you get all of the stories in line. And people would tell me that I had a pretty unique window into an amazing sport in its transition between adventure, gentleman yachtsman, and the professional racing yachts business that we have today. And I was very lucky to be a part of that. And Bound for Roque is, it's two stories basically, as you well know. One is about my family and cruising today aboard a vintage 80-year-old wooden sailboat that's been in my family now for nearly 40 years, and flashbacks to when I began sailing when I was 19 years old, stowing away on a boat and heading for Bermuda in my first Bermuda race.
Right. So when did you start sailing? How did you get into that? Did you have parents or a background of sailing, or did you just decide this is something that sounded great to you?
Absolutely. I was as far from the water as possible. I did not even see the ocean until I was 19 years old, and I grew up in upstate New York, in Syracuse, New York, and the biggest thing I had ever sailed was a aluminum canoe, and when I had always been a skier, and after college, I went to work in Sugar Bush Valley and Vermont on the ski patrol, and I worked there for a couple of years. And one of my friends had a brother who owned a sailboat in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and I knew nothing about sailing or the ocean or sailboats, but and this story is in the book about my talking my way into being a sailing instructor that summer, and luckily no one got hurt, and everyone learned something. I'm not sure exactly what these days, but I got through that, and my career took off from there in a series of Forrest Gump kind of episodes where I happened to be in the right place at the right time to run into some of the icons of the sailing world, and those people, Ted Turner and Huey Long and all of the others that basically were the gentleman yachtsmen that would spend $200,000 a year for tin cups and no return on their investment, just for bragging rights at the bar. And we did a lot of bragging at the bar.
Right. As a matter of fact, I think one of the stories in the book was how you got into racing was after a night at the bar, and the Bermuda race was going to be in the near future.
Right.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, I was working, I was living aboard the sailboat that I had come down to work on from Vermont, and bartending at night in a little place on Smith Neck in Gloucester, Massachusetts, run by a very colorful character whose father was one of the last captains on the schooners that used to sailfish, sailing and fishing out of Gloucester, Massachusetts, and they all would participate in the great schooner races between Canada. The Blue Nose, of course, is the most famous Canadian boat, and the Gertrude L. Theobald, which was the Gloucester. It was like before America's Cup. These schooners, 110-foot sparred schooners would race. And her father was one of the captains aboard the last winning race. And Evie was a colorful character, and people would love to come into her bar, and it was called the Rudder Restaurant. And one night, Mr. Goobleman came in, who owned a beautiful boat, Wendigo, and he basically was talking about the Bermuda race that was upcoming, and Evie talked him into taking me along, and in a drunken moment he said, "Show up." So when I did show up, he had of course forgotten about it and failed to mention it to the captain or the rest of the crew. And so basically I was a stowaway aboard the boat until such time as we could sort it out. But that was the beginning of my career, and things went on fairly rapidly after that.
Son of a gun, it's amazing how things get started, isn't it?
It is, I mean, it's you put the temptation in front of a young man's fancy, and he starts dreaming in the daylight, and you know how dangerous that is.
Absolutely. And 25, 30 years later, you're known for your adventures as a captain and a sailboat captain, and writing books about it. And it all started back then with no background. So that kind of just shows listeners that anything's possible. You don't have to have a background or have a family member that's been involved in the sailing. Is it still true, or is it better to have?
I think even more so today, Bruce. I mean, back then there were not. The yachting industry was not that big of a recreational industry. It was, it was much more, the people that had been in it, had their family had been in it, and it was passed down from generation to generation. Or the Ted Turners, who basically looked at it as as an enterprise that they wanted to get involved in with their business acumen. But anybody today, I think there are so many boats, and there are so many people that want to sail their boats, and always can use an extra hand. The more hands that know what they're doing, the safer the boat is. So I would think that the opportunities today would be very good if anybody out there that is listening right now that wanted to try and see what the sailing adventure could be. They just go down to their nearest yacht club and talk to the people there. They're usually very friendly, and everybody's always looking for one more crew member that might help out.
Oh, that sounds great. I mean, that's encouraging for people that have been around water and may have an interest in that, but are at a loss as to how to start. And that's great to hear. So, what advice would you have for somebody that's looking at sailing and racing and buying a boat if they're just starting off? Let's say in their late teens, early 20s, mid 20s.
Well, the more young people that get into sailing, I think the better it's going to be. And today there's such a variety of watercraft, from sailboards to kite flying to. I mean, there's a number of ways to get out on the water and use the wind as opposed to an internal combustion engine. It used to be us sailors used to call them stink pots, and the new politically correct word for them is earth warmers. So try to stay away from the earth warmer boats and stick with sail. But I would say that almost anybody that has an inclination to start sailing is going to find a way for them to do it. And the mechanics of sailing are very common sense, straightforward, and if you can sail, and I've always told people this, if you can sail a 14-foot boat competently, you're able to take out an 80-foot boat. You just have to think bigger and build in a lot more margins for error, but it's the dynamics are the same, all of the rules are the same, and it still gives you that same excitement whether you're flying a spinnaker on a 14-footer or you're barreling down the roaring 40s with a 60-foot boat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now you've got an older boat that's proven and it's been around for quite a while. Are there a lot of those boats that are still around, or do people go and get the newer boats now?
Most people will opt to buy a boat that they understand the maintenance program on it, a fiberglass boat and a wooden sailboat. I own an 80-year-old boat that was designed by Philip Rhodes in 1931. And, that boat is, I saw that actually on one of my very first Bermuda races. It was just sitting there off in the distance as I was preparing the boat to start the race. And, it is one of those daylight wishes. I said, boy, that is the most beautiful boat. If I could ever find a boat like that, I would buy it in a heartbeat. And come to find out, 12 years later, actually the gentleman that was with the New York Yacht Club looked me up and asked me if I was interested in the boat. And I, of course, picked her up. And as my wife says, I only get one wife and one boat this life that I have to pay the bills on. So Dog Star has been in our family since 1978.
Son of a gun. Well, that's fascinating. What skill sets do you feel are really important for people that want to get into sailing?
I think it's basically a sense of adventure. I think that, as William Leesmoon says, be careful wishing for adventure because it's ridiculously easy to find, and especially when you're sailing. I mean, every time you let the dock lines go, there's something that's waiting out there to spice up your life. But I think that anybody that wants to really dive into sailing today can find someone to help mentor them. And if you're coming aboard someone's yacht, a couple of quick rules: don't do anything unless you're asked to. If you have a question, if someone gives you a term that is unfamiliar to you, port, starboard, halyard, winch, any of the lingo, clarify it before you take a step, because on a boat things are moving fairly quickly, and even though you're only traveling at 8 or 9 miles an hour, the pressures are measured in the tens of tons of what a sail can do if something lets go, either inadvertently or by operator error. And those are the things that you want to be sure that the number one thing if you're a guest on somebody's boat is not to bleed on it.
Okay. They don't want it and you don't want it.
They don't want it and you don't want it. No, and there are a lot of things that move, and for your listeners, I mean, the first times that you're aboard a boat and the boat passes through the wind, which is just coming from the wind being on one side of the boat to the other side of the boat, there's a lot of shaking and rattling, and it sounds like the end of the earth, and it's something that most sailors do 200 times every time they go out for an afternoon. So everything is new, everything cracks and bangs and and is scary because nothing stays on the flat, everything is on the tilt. And so I'm basically sit, do what you're told, and try not to get yourself in trouble.
I'm afraid that would be me.
Well, a good captain, Bruce, would be sure that, that's the captain's job, is to make sure that everybody survives the effort safely.
Absolutely. You were talking about port side and starboard and all that. Do you know where the word posh came from?
Posh? Port out, starboard, no. What was it? Port out, starboard, return, or something like that?
That's just in the 40s when Churchill and all those went down to Funchal and Madeira and the islands, the Canary Islands, they would go and they'd want the port side for the sunrise, port side out, starboard home.
Starboard home. That was it. Starboard home. Yeah. That's
Yeah, always.
that is a great thing. Yeah, it's very posh.
Yeah,
And there's still some posh people in sailing, even though it's pretty egalitarian now.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned in the book rain gear, and I picked that up being somebody that has hiked and climbed and stuff like that. Explain what you meant by having the rain gear a little bit larger and how important it is to have rain gear if you're going to be a sailor, sailing in long expeditions or races or stuff like that.
Well, I think everybody's been out on the water and had, even on a beautiful day, you'll get a wind blowing across, 35 or 40 degrees water, and it makes a brilliant air conditioner. And so foul weather gear is essential. And even if you're a guest aboard the boat, either ask if there is foul weather gear for you or what the captain would recommend for you to bring along on that particular day. But in the book, I'm talking pretty much about blue water sailing and what I have found to work everywhere from the tropics, down into the roaring 40s and screaming 50s is, buying the best quality rain gear that you can possibly afford and then upping it a grade, because there's nothing so bad as sitting there in the beginning of a 4-hour watch and having that trickle start down the back of your neck, and you're trying to stay warm, and it's that cold, wet water that just is coming down, and you know that you're going to be sitting there at the wheel of that boat for 4 hours, and it's not a very pleasant anticipation of a wonderful evening under sail.
Right.
So layering, of course, Bruce, as hikers, most of us know that you want things to wick away from your body, to keep your warmth. And so always buy the best. Always be sure to layer. Always bring an extra pair of socks because your feet always get very wet. And those are the things that are the hardest to get warm again. And like when you're skiing, remember, it's much easier to stay warm than to get warm. So be careful of getting a chill.
Right. And that's interesting because somebody, I've got some background with hiking and doing long treks. So I knew that, but intuitively you would think, oh, you're out on the water and it's really nice and it's sunny and all the rest of it, but it does get cold. And
Exactly.
if there's a rain, stuff like that, it can be dangerous. You could get hypothermia, right?
Oh, absolutely. That is one of the things that, on a boat and on a long, in blue water sailing, which is what Bound for Roca is mostly about, in my early career, was, you really have to be careful because the opportunity out there to have something go wrong, and you're usually days away from any kind of medical help or emergency, and as you know, hypothermia, lowers your ability to make good judgment decisions, and that coupled with bad weather, coupled with not being able to keep food down, all of those things make deep water ocean sailing something that appeals to someone who is ready to take it on and grin and bear it and get through it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, over the last 20 years, especially the last, say, 5 to 10 years, we've had a bunch of inventions, and one of them is the global positioning satellites devices. Has that changed sailing? Do a lot of people use them, or is it used during racing? How has that affected?
It has. The advent of GPS and it had a poor cousin, Loran, which became pretty much used during the early 70s and right on through until the 90s when the GPS was released for for public use. It had always been a military thing, but it takes so much of the worry out of knowing where you are. An old sailor once said to me, and I said, well, I'm looking for local knowledge about this harbor, and I need to know where all the rocks are. And he says, that's the wrong way to go about it. He says, you don't need to know where all the rocks are, you need to know where all the rocks aren't. And he says, it's easier to learn that. And I said, oh, that's a good idea. And so, that, basically that's, open water sailing is you need to learn where all of the major pitfalls and dangers aren't. And usually it's good if you're heading offshore with somebody, make sure that you know them and that they know their business. And with the plethora of boats that are out there right now, there's no driver's license, there's no, anybody with $1 can buy a boat and go out there and do as they will with it. So it's basically a defensive mechanism if you're a boat out there and someone doesn't seem to know what they're doing. And there are a few.
Now, did you ever use the, I think it's a sextant, right?
I did, and I don't. Interesting story about the sextant, and it is in the book. It's about flying into Hyannisport, which you would think, the Kennedy compound and all of that sailors would be well appreciated in all of their arcane gear. I was coming back from a Bermuda race, and in the Bermuda race, they have one category of boats that if you decide not to use your GPS, and if you decide to only use a sextant, you enter into another category where you're competing against other boats that are only using a sextant for the 640-mile race out to Bermuda. And so I was bringing it back, and I was passing through the Hyannis airport after dropping the boat off on the Cape. And, sextants are kind of a interesting. I mean, most people know what they look like. They're like an astrolabe, an eighth of a circle with a swinging bar on it, and it's all bronze. And it's a beautiful piece of work, but you can't, think about it being used for anything else, which is what I thought. And I'm passing through Hyannis doing the scan through the machine, and the young man stopped it and backed it up, and because I wanted to carry it aboard. And he backed it up and backed it up and backed it up, and it was like a bomb. Everybody in the small little waiting room was kind of getting a little nervous about it. And so he says, "What is this thing?" And I says, "Well, it's a sextant." And because the line was holding up, a guy from across the room goes, "What's wrong?" And the young man says, "He's got a sex toy here, and he wants to take it on the plane."
Oh my!
And so, if you can imagine, I mean, Hyannis is a very conservative, New Englander. You could have heard, a gnat fart. I mean, there was dead silence, dead silence. And so, when we finally found the pilot of the aircraft came down and says, "Yes, that's a sextant," and everybody was relieved that, because as they all looked at it, Bruce, this was so funny. I mean, the box is open and they're looking down at it, and I can just imagine, 20 fertile minds trying to figure out how that could ever help in a sexual act with anything.
Oh,
so that's my sextant story.
Oh, for crying out loud. Anyways, and with the sextant, for those listeners that have never really seen it, you described it. What you're doing is you're using it for declination and azimuths and all that, and that's how you determine where you were based on the map, and correct?
Exactly right. All you need to, if you know the time, I mean, Greenwich, England is the median, and if you know your time, then you know your longitude. So if you have a correct clock, you'll always know where you are. That's why time zones change all the way around the world. Every minute is a mile. On the latitude side, where that's the one where you have to get a astral body, either the sun or the moon or a star, in order to measure its angle, and then you use a set of tables to get a line that will cross your line of position, and I would say that I was pretty good with it. I mean, I found my way across the Pacific and to many islands using a sextant, and I always built in a margin of about 5 miles, so I knew within about 5 miles where I was. But some of the old hats would say that they could do it down to a quarter of a mile.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure more experience, and you've probably done things more often, you're going to be better off.
Right.
Very interesting. So there are people that still use them then?
There are. I was a little appalled that about 7 or 8 years ago, Annapolis, the Naval Academy, stopped making it mandatory, even though 70% of their graduates still do take a sextant course. But they decided that it was. And I keep saying, what happens when all the batteries don't work? I mean, we're all just going to, be lost at sea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you always want that backup, I'm sure. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You could really be in a heap of problems.
Absolutely.
So that's fascinating. Now, you've been to Asia and Nepal, and that's an area I was talking to you earlier about going to Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your adventures through Nepal and Tibet and that area of the world, because you weren't just on the sea, the open sea or the ocean, but you've been on land also.
Well, it was sort of a hiatus. My wife and I, we've been together since high school, and we were, on our way. Well, back up one. I would say, we were doing the ocean racing, and, there's an old story about, a sailor was so sick of what he was doing that he put an oar over his shoulder and he walked inland. And the very first place that he got to, where someone said, "What's that thing on your shoulder?" he said, "This is far enough in boats. I'll stay here." And our trip to Nepal was pretty much that. We had been racing, $1 million yachts, and it's a pretty high stakes. I mean, it's when, even though it's not money changing hands, the people that you're working for are very keen and competitive, let's say. And I described some of the characters in the book about how competitive they can get, almost to a fault. But it was time for me to take a break. And so my wife and I, Mary, we took off for a year of trekking, through Nepal, did some mountain climbing there, and then ended up in Australia. But our trip through Nepal was eye-opening. I mean, Bruce, this was 1973, 72, 73. And as we arrived, they were just crowning the prince as king of Nepal. And he was parading through the streets, and the ritual ceremony as his inauguration was taking place was that he had to be packed with 75 pounds of yak dung. This was part of their ritual of assuming the throne. And it's a different world than it is today. They don't do yak dung anymore, I don't think. But it was wild and woolly, and it was it was just the turn of the 60s into the early 70s, and it was a very eclectic group of international expatriates that were in Kathmandu at that time.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that struck me, as I told you, I was almost went there, wish I had, and it's a lesson that I learned that has changed my life, because I took that negative and I always say yes now instead of no. And I was reading about the people, and I've been in China and Asia and Africa, and you say, everybody's smiling.
Yes.
They're all happy. And you say, good Lord, their lifestyle isn't what we think it should be because we're judging it from where we are. Yet they seem to be very content and serene, happy people, don't they?
Well, yeah, Bruce. I mean, you and your program that does so much to to open the world to people. You understand that when we were on the Cape Horn adventure, we ran into somebody that was 1,000 miles from the nearest road, stuck out in the middle of nowhere. He and his family, and his Spanish was good enough so that we could understand each other, and he was one of the remains of the Indian tribes in Patagonia. But he said, he said, my family and I are not poor. We just don't have any money. And it's exactly what you said. I mean, the smiles were there, the willingness to include you in their life and to give what they could, and to totally enjoy the opportunity to make friends and to experience two diverse cultures getting together. That is something that every third world country seems to have, and I think maybe we could use a little more of that here in the United States these days. Let's smile more and try to look at the divisiveness less.
Right, and I think the thing is a lot of people measure what they have and figure, all right, what I can have and what I can get is going to make me happy. And I've always had this philosophy: if you're happy where you are, you're going to be happy where you get to. If you're not happy where you are, you're never going to be happy with what you get or the new thing that you buy or anything like that. And that's the one thing that I learned from traveling is they appreciate where they are, and they're extremely happy with where they are too.
Oh, exactly.
Now you mentioned that the Dalai Lama, who is somebody that I even though I'm Christian, I have a lot of respect for the Buddhists and for the Dalai Lama and their sets of rules that they live by. Did you get to see the Dalai Lama?
We did only in passing. We were on the trek from Kathmandu, getting up to Namche Bazaar, which is the base camp of Everest, is about a 12 to a 15-day hike up and down the mountains. And probably as the crow flies, it's probably 100 miles. But when we were in Faplu, which was an airport up in the mountains, maybe 200 people on this little tilted, slanted community, and a Pilatus Porter landed, and aboard were Sir Edmund Hillary and the Dalai Lama. And they both got off and stretched their legs, and Mary and I had a chance to talk with them and chat with them, and they were just delightful. Both of them,
sure,
great men, icons in the world, and down to earth, and as you say, they both. I don't have a picture in my mind of either of them without a smile on their face.
Mm-hmm. And Dalai Lama especially. I mean, the thing that strikes me about them is be mindful of where you are right now. In other words, enjoy where you are. Enjoy what you're doing. Don't think about what you're going to do later. Think about what you're doing right now and enjoy where you are. And I think that's great advice.
Oh, I agree, Bruce. And in the book, as there is one little chapter where my children aboard the boat throw back at me all of those grandma euphemisms that you you share over the years, imparting them as wisdom to your children. And there's this one part in the book where they sort of do a litany of all of the crazy things. Taken out of context, they sound kind of weird. But one of them that they both liked was, when I said that true happiness is not getting what you want, but wanting what you have. And I think both of them have taken that to heart, and they're both very mindful of that and try to impart that to their children.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So they both sail. It's Sky and Tristan, right?
Sky and Tristan, right?
Right.
And they do both sail. Sky a little bit less. She actually has one of our early tenders. We trucked it up to Alaska, and it's a dire dinghy, a sailing dire dinghy. Most older sailors will remember those, and so she has that on a little lake that's right next to their place, and so she's teaching her children, which are Irish triplets, 6, 5, and 4, how to sail there in Alaska on a boat that she learned to sail on 30 years ago.
Wow, that's something.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting into longer days there now.
Yes, it starts to grow. The Iditarod starts this week.
Right.
So.
Right. Now you did some dog racing up there with
I did.
Anchorage,
we were,
right?
When we left sailing finally, not the first time, but after about 10 years in the business, we of course had our own boat, and I would do, some deliveries and some epic kind of cruise things. But basically, I was in Alaska for 20 years, and we took up dog racing, and I got involved in the Iditarod, was on the board of directors. I never ran the race, but I would do 500-mile races, many in Alaska, and that's it's much like sailing when you're out there with the dogs, and you have to rely on their wind to get you back.
Right. Anybody that is going to visit Anchorage, there's the highway going up to Denali, and you go by the Iditarod. I think it's the headquarters, right?
Right, in Wasilla.
Right. I was there about 6 or 7 years ago, and got to experience some of the stuff there. Very interesting. So, what parts of the world would you like to visit again, or are you just want to the new? Got to experience some of the stuff there. Very interesting. So, what parts of the world would you like to visit again, or are you just want to the new?
That's like asking, which chocolate out of that 25,000 box you're going to pick. I mean, every place has. I've always taken something that has helped me away from just about any port I've ever been in, and as your audience attests to, is that there is travel. I mean, everyone who travels opens their mind, and I think that many of us need to get out and see the world as it is, rather than just waiting for the nightly news to tell us what it is. And I think we would find it to be much more beautiful, much more friendly, much more in balance than we are getting from the sensational news media that we're experiencing today. I mean, there have always been pirates, there have always been dictators, there's always been tension between countries, but I've always found, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is that if you go in there open, friendly, ready to treat yourself as a guest, usually you're going to find some sympathetic ear that's going to help you out.
Absolutely, and I think that's the main thing about traveling is you go there and you realize you're a guest, and you are also an ambassador for the United States.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
Everything you do and everything you say, people are looking at it, and they judge the entire country by your actions. And So it's really important to be a good ambassador for this country. Um, so in
yeah, I
2000,
feel, Bruce. I mean, just to put an end to that, if I was ruler and a king of the United States, I would make something like the Peace Corps mandatory for every young person to leave this country and go to a third world country for a year, and not just for a week. I mean, go get to know the people, get to know that the world is a richer, more fabulous, more mysterious place than you can ever imagine, and experience yourself, not do it through someone else's eyes or someone else's impressions.
That's right. Saint Augustine has a saying, or had a saying, that I enjoy, and that is, not to travel is like having a book and reading one page.
Very good. Yeah, and you think of that, I mean, what's that, 700 years ago? So.
That's right. That's right. Now, in 2007, you went to Cape Horn, and I understand from what you were saying to me before being on air, you're writing a book, or there's going to be a book.
Well, the next, yes, yeah, it's finished, and it's getting ready to go out to an editor, and it is a story about the trip to Cape Horn, and I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but how we came to going to Cape Horn was that three old sailors, Bob Trenery and Jim Stanek and myself, who sailed together. I've got, 250,000 miles blue water sailing, and tens of thousands of them have been with both of these guys. And we were sitting around the table, and Jim was telling a story, and when he finished, and he was expecting, to have questions or something, I said, Jim, that's my story. I said, that happened to me. We had told each other the same story so many times that he was beginning to think it was him in that story. And so I said to the two others as we were sitting there having a cocktail, I said, we're just getting too darn old to have new stories, so we should go out and make some. And so they all looked at me, and I said, let's go to Cape Horn. We got a brand new boat here. I mean, and so everybody gulped it down, and that was laying down the gauntlet for the Cape Horn trip, which was a great 2-year experience. And the way that we did it, like you said, I mean, most sailors think that you have to shoot the dog, sell the house, abandon the kids and grandkids, and sail off into the sunset for some ungodly amount of time. And we tried to prove that just like you do an expedition up Mount Everest or mountain climbing, you can stage an expedition with your cruising sailboat by leaving it at different places. Today with the internet, it's easy to locate them, it's easy to find out about them, make them work, and you can do extraordinary things, as we took a fairly common sailboat down around Cape Horn, 26,000 miles. So
now
you just start with one step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to do another program. We're going to talk about expeditions because that's the way I hike, or I can't hike anymore, but my knees are just shot.
Well, but now you're going to have to take up sailing, Bruce. As I told you, this is your new. This could be your new goal.
Absolutely. Where is Cape Horn for those people that don't know?
Well, Cape Horn is at the very tip of South America, and to get down there, we went through the Panama Canal coming from Maine. We went down through the Bahamas and then Jamaica and through Panama, and then hopscotch down the western coast of South America, Peru and Chile, and then to Argentina. And Cape Horn is that one place on Earth where it's the worst weather the most times of the year. And the reason is that it's the only place on Earth where the ocean goes all the way around. It circumnavigates. So wind, if it starts rolling, can go entirely around the Earth without ever striking a landmass that deadens it or lifts it or breaks it up. And that's why cruise ships these days are getting in trouble trying to make the trip across the Drake Passage to Antarctica, because it is just miserable down there, and it is, the weather is a bully, and it's cold and it's mean and it's very strong winds, and so that there, Cape Horn is 400 miles south of the Cape of Good Hope, which is the southern part of Africa, and so it's a long way down there. It's 56 degrees south. 56 degrees is the Arctic Circle.
Right.
Almost.
Now, the other thing, if I'm correct, you could also have no wind, correct?
Yeah, you can for very brief periods.
That's one of the most dangerous things about it, is because you don't know when the wind's coming, correct?
You can. They're almost like elephants in a circus parade. These pachyderms of these big low pressure systems just line up one after the other, and it's like 4 days of the wind trying to scour the earth clean of everything, any vegetation, any human activity, anything, and then you'll get 1 day of fairly nice weather, and then it starts deteriorating again for the next one coming in. So it's challenging sailing, but it's the most beautiful, wild place I've ever been, and I've been a few places.
I've heard that from numerous people that have been down to they've seen the penguins in, I think it's Antarctica, right?
Mm-hmm. But Patagonia itself, and I'll tell you, the amount of water, the fresh water that is pouring off those mountains down there, it's a very strong case for global warming. When we're looking at guidebooks that have a picture of a glacier 3 years ago, and now it's running, it's 3 or 4 miles receded up into the mass of the mountain of the Andean ice cap. It's pretty pronounced down there. I think any skeptic that doesn't believe that our globe is warming up should go down there and take a look.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I believe, and this is a personal belief from my background, that we're talking about a cycle, whether it's 1,000-year cycle or 500-year cycle, and it's been going on for millennium. And it may be more pronounced because we've got very short memories as human beings. We look at the last 5 years and we think that's a lifetime. And I mean, there are people that have been talking to me that the continental shelf used to be above water, and when the glaciers, wait a minute, he said there were settlements out off the coast of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, that area, and he's found archaeological settlements that are probably thousands of years old, so who knows. Anyways, you've got a couple of other books coming out. Tell us a little bit about Gatsby's Last Resort. We've got about 4 minutes left.
Well, my old writing mentor, he once told me, Clive Cussler, he said, you write nonfiction to pay the bills, and you write fiction to soothe your soul. And so I had to do a fiction book, and so I had done a couple of novels, back 20 years ago, and decided to branch back into it. And I live in Telluride, Colorado, which is a fairly strange and exotic place. It's peopled by very colorful characters, and so I took them and came up with a lighthearted murder mystery that takes place here in Telluride. And the protagonist of the book is is a Ute Spanish young man who's married to the district attorney, and he has a problem with authority, and he manages to get himself in an awful lot of trouble here in Telluride with the celebrities, and this is the first in a series of 3, and the second one will be out in June, and the third one will be out in Christmas.
Wow. You are busy. Do you have a blog and other things that you're going to be doing in the near future too?
You know, we have. I have my website at RJ Rubadeau, Rubadeau, books.com, and that's one way to get to the website. Another would be boundforroque.com, and Roque is ROQUE, not bound for rogue. So.
Right.
So either one of those will bring you to the website, and there's information on all of the books, and of course my Facebook page is open, and that has copies of 30 or 40 articles in the last 5 or 6 years, including the 3 feature articles on the Cape Horn trip, and so there's a lot of materials out there, and I'm looking forward to having these fiction books out there, because I think they're a hoot and a holler, and I think in Bound for Roque, Bruce, you probably got a few laughs out of there. I do try to bring some mirth and merriment into the equation of writing, so I think people will enjoy it, and I always offer a money-back guarantee.
What is your Facebook page?
It's just Bob Rubadeau.
Bob Rubadeau. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to that RJ Rubadeau, RUBADEAU.com, and you can get all the links, exact links to his websites and pages. I'm going to keep that page there for you, Bob. And you just go to withbruce.com website, and I do that with all my programs. For those of you that are listening, hope you enjoyed this program. If you'd like to listen to more programs like this one, please follow me or subscribe to my iTunes channel, and all broadcasts of Cruise with Bruce are archived. Bye now, and we'll talk to you again, Bob.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce, and it's a wonderful show. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.